Hi, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where I deliver content intended to inspire, educate, and motivate. Engage with me online at elleruss.com and on social media. Enjoy the show. Today, my guest is an all-time favorite. I've known him for many years, Darryl Edwards. He's a former investment banking technologist who took some really bold moves in life and followed his passions on the heels of some bad health diagnoses and turned into a movement coach and author. He is the founder of the Primal Play Method. You can go to primalplay.com to learn more about him. Basically, he has combined evolutionary biology, what we need, with exercise physiology, why it works, and play psychology, the motivation to do it. He is the author of a book called Animal Moves, which highlights why humans should move like the animals we are. And inspired by the book's success, he launched a 30-day online course and created a range of fitness decks that have been shipped to over 40 countries called the Animal Moves Fitness Decks. These are fun fitness cards for adults, juniors, and even infants aged 3 to 6. This September, he released a wonderful children's picture book called My First Animal Moves, and we'll talk a bit about that today, and also the bold moves he made in following his passions that absolutely were against what common society would think was the right thing to do. Turns out it was. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hey, Darryl, welcome to my new show.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure. I feel so excited, Elle. I really do.
Well, we've known each other. I met you, I think, 10 years ago at PrimalCon. And when I met you there, you were doing incredible primal play exercises with everybody. And so before we get into that, let's just talk about your 2 decades in the investment banking world and just walk us through, because it's strange to just go from that and jump into being a movement coach and all of the interesting sort of ancestral movement practicing and teaching you've been doing. So tell us about that journey.
I was just fed up of making lots of money in investment banking. It's as simple as that. And wanting to get out. But I suppose a precursor to that really was having an annual health check and being told I was pre-diabetic. I had high risk of cardiovascular disease, heart attack or stroke within the next 5 to 10 years. And also living with chronic hypertension, chronic high blood pressure, facing statins for the cholesterol problems, beta blockers for the blood pressure, and metformin to control my blood sugars. And that recipe or concoction, something I would have to face for the rest of my life. I wanted to find out if there were any other options, any other alternatives for me. And fortunately, I knew exercise was one way I could certainly manage my blood pressure. And that's what I started doing. With my doctor's sort of permission to try exercise out and see if there were going to be any changes. And thank goodness, within a short space of time, my blood pressure came down, and this was literally within a month. My blood pressure came down. I kept on getting my markers checked and tested, and my blood sugar started to improve, and my cholesterol and lipids started to improve. And my doctor questioned initially whether I'd taken prescription meds from another doctor. That was the first question that was posed. And I said, no, I said, I haven't taken anything, and I'm still really unsure about taking anything. And he was like, well, just continue what you're doing and let me do some research, because I want to find out, are you an anomaly, or is there something in relation to you taking part in exercise? And was
it just exercise that you adjusted at that time, or did you also overhaul and adopt a primal diet?
It was initially exercise. So for me, the gateway to improving my health was exercise. Mm-hmm. I didn't know much about exercise, to be honest, let alone changing my diet. And I actually started off I did a calorie restricted diet initially, just counting my calories. Really tedious process of reducing my calories as much as possible. And all that happened was I got really gaunt, was really miserable, and all I could do is think about food all of the time. And I dropped a few pounds for sure, or maybe a half a stone or so, as we say here in the UK. and I was like, there's something not quite right with this. What else can I do? Because I know I need to certainly think more about my diet. But the exercise being the gateway and me recognizing how powerful lifestyle was, I think made it easier for me to choose my next intervention in relation to diet. And that was actually reading, there were two things I did actually. One was I read a book about the zone diet, which was very popular back then in the early to mid 2000s. Very popular, quite a high protein, relatively low carb, relatively low to moderate fat diet. There was all this science in this book, which I was fascinated by. And I read all of these remarkable testimonials of people doing well with this diet. I thought, let me give that a whirl. Unfortunately, it still maintained my neuroticism around diet because I went from counting calories to weighing and measuring my food. Because that diet, you had to be very precise about the ratios of fat to protein to carbohydrates. And you literally were counting, 9 almonds. I couldn't have 10. It was
right. Well, and the other thing about that diet too is it's that whole philosophy of like, hey, keep your insulin steady and eat 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. It's like you're kind of like dropping off. You're having like little hypoglycemic moments after 4 hours, and then you got to pick it up. And then it was later discovered that the guy who wrote The Zone, Barry Sears, he talked about how, this diet was really for like crazy swimmer athletes, like the Michael Phelps of the world. And what they actually did to sort of, how do you say, sort of make up for the loss in the general zone for these swimmers was actually adding fat, which it was sort of like in small print somewhere, in the book. So kind of interesting, but I got sucked into the zone thing too. And again, I think it almost makes you a food craver. It kind of keeps you on the carbohydrate dependency type of wheel.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I mean, to be honest, I was sold when I realized, because by the time I started really getting into exercise, which I did, and I was getting into an early adopter of CrossFit at the time, zone was something that was promoted. So I was just like, this is about performance. And I suppose your point about this, a diet for athletes, kind of makes sense. And that's how it was promoted. And that's certainly why I tried the zone diet. For me, the whole issue was around, I felt like I was dealing in food macros. It was kind of, me weighing and measuring my food every single day and literally counting almonds and only having a certain amount of grams of steak, because if I tipped over that ratio, things weren't going to be great for me. So that was my love affair with the zone was relatively short-lived. But then somebody told me about this, eat like a caveman. And I was like, what the heck? What are you talking about? Oh, there's this great book, Lauren Cordain, The Paleo Diet. You've got to check it out. You won't have to count your calories or you won't have to measure your food. Just eat naturally. I was like, okay, that's the first time I've heard of this concept of eating more aligned with your kind of genetic heritage or genetic blueprint. I read the book. I remember thinking to myself, well, I live in the 20th century. I'm not the 21st century. I'm not a caveman. What's this all about? But there was something about it which resonated. And what resonated was, if we're designed to interact, created, evolved to interact with the environment around us, and our ancestors pretty much are identical to us, apart from very small changes, maybe there's something in eating pre-agriculturally, me not focusing so much on processed foods, which is what I was certainly doing, me thinking a bit more about having predominantly wheat and dairy in my diet and not particularly doing well on those foods and having GI upset. So that made sense. I was like, you know what, let me just eat more real food. And that term wasn't coined then, eating real food, but certainly there was a shift of me thinking much more about my food and my food quality. So what resonated with me was this going back to basics, looking at the past and blending that with the present day, and also thinking about there is this over-reliance on me for processed foods and artificial foods surely if I cut those out, whatever the reason, that has to be more beneficial for me. And that was my first sort of love affair with paleo and the paleo diet and primal and living this more natural lifestyle. And so I think Primal Play kind of came out of that, because I wanted to take that evolutionary fitness concept, marrying that with the diet that I was following, and then thinking about all these other questions around, what about my sleep, and what about managing stress, and what about reducing toxicity in my life, whether that was other human beings or, or the environment that I'm in. And that was life-changing for me.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say this. I mean, whether you would say it about yourself or not, I don't know. But the truth is that you really were the one in the past decade or so who revolutionized the way they really thought about this. There really wasn't anyone out there sort of taking those types of meaty stuff from, these types of books, the health part, the diet part, and then going into really like, what can I extract from this movement? And on a side note, just for our listeners, Lauren Cordain is absolutely the number one OG of the paleo primal dietary research and lifestyle. In fact, and just as a side tidbit, he actually owns the trademark to paleo diet. So if someone is writing a book about paleo primal health, we cannot actually put the term the paleo diet into our books. We have to do. So in my first book, The Paleo Thyroid Solution, I remember being told and being very careful that anytime I referred to it, I would just say paleo primal lifestyle or paradigm or eating strategy, but you could not use the word paleo diet. But he really is great. I've interviewed him before, and he's awesome also in CJ Hunt's The Perfect Human Diet documentary. He really just, he's outstanding. I'm so glad you found that information. And then, so what's interesting is you were thinking about, okay, you moved into the movement part of it. Where did the first book come from? Your bestseller, because you've got a couple now, but Animal Moves. Let's talk about, the inception and sort of the progression of that.
Okay. So talking about the paleo diet, my first book was actually called Paleo Fitness.
Oh, that's right.
So
right.
So that was published by a company out in Oakland, California, so that was a great way for me to talk about the paleo diet in quotation marks, but more interestingly talk about paleo fitness and moving like our ancestors used to move, modeling how our ancestors moved in the present day. And when I look back at paleo fitness, I feel that it was quite elitist, actually, because I almost wrote that book for really fit people, for people who probably already were doing lots of exercise and already had great ideas as to what fitness meant to them, and they really wanted to push the envelope. And that's how I suppose I started my fitness journey, coming out of investment banking, wanting to cater to the elite. I originally wanted to have a gym, which was like a black box gym, small membership for CEOs and those with lots of money who would join, and thrived purely on the basis of competition and really punishing, grueling workouts. That was my original plan and my intention, until I realized, one, I wanted to cater to a much wider demographic. And secondly, I started to fall out of love with the intense focus on competition and getting on the leaderboard and not being happy with second best and realizing I couldn't always be first and often wasn't. So this is a problem, right? How I'm not motivating myself anymore. I've achieved a lot of the physical goals that I set myself, especially because I started from such a poor starting point. I was very sedentary, a sedentary adult, hadn't moved apart from typing on a keyboard for years. So all of that progress I had within the first few years, and I kind of lapped up and I was getting stronger and fitter and faster and healthier. Once I plateaued, it was easy for me to relax and go, I've achieved what I want to set out to achieve. I'm not on the meds. I seem to be looking after myself, but I'm not enjoying the process. And there are less targets for me to aim for now. There's something missing. And that was the first time in my paleo primal lifestyle, several years in, not that I started to regret what I was doing, but certainly felt I was no longer passionate about it. I didn't feel as if I had a zest for life anymore. And even though I wanted to leave, I'd probably left my career by then, my previous career, I realized, oh, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do that really excites me? And that's how Primal Play came about. When I realized I wanted to launch a methodology based on the principles of primal movement, natural instinctive movement, evolutionary fitness, but also marry that with play psychology, because I wanted to give that bitter pill of exercise a tastier appeal, to make it more acceptable, more palatable for people to engage in. And then finally, use exercise physiology and the science of exercise to validate what I was doing and why. So I wanted to understand why exercise was beneficial, why movement and physical activity was beneficial, how it improved those health markers of mine many years ago. Why was it beneficial for reducing blood pressure? Why could it help with moderating and modulating my blood sugars? Why could it help improve my lipid profile? I had no idea prior to that research and experimentation. And so that's how, those are the sort of three pillars of Primal Play in the Primal Play method: exercise, physiology, play psychology, and evolutionary fitness.
What a bold ass move to just go from that corporate world of somewhat of a stability there. I mean, everything's at will employment, right? But there's some sort of sense of stability when you're working for a company and you have benefits and salary and all that kind of stuff, to go to be like, I'm going to invent some new shit, everybody. Hey, look, that's really bold, man. Tell me, what were some of the thought process along the way? I mean, did you have moments of like, oh my God, who do I think I am? Or, you have to have a lot of confidence to make a bold move like that. What's great about it is you were passionate about it. It was something you love. So you followed it. And people always, say, well, that's ridiculous, because what I love about it is there was no way that you could have predicted like, oh, this would actually be something that could be income generating. If you had told anyone this idea at the time, they would have been like, all right, how are you going to make money at that? Or this is weird. Who's going to want this? Right. I'm sure you probably got a lot of that. So talk to me a little bit about that, because this is a very bold life move.
It certainly was a bold move. And certainly, probably for the first few years, I lived off the fumes of my previous career and income. Mm-hmm. I was floating around thinking, oh, isn't this fun? I don't have to think about making money. I can just focus on having fun. Until you have to start really thinking about paying the bills and monetization and running a business and not really having a clue about it whatsoever. And it was at that point when I realized I have to start thinking about monetization. I have to start thinking about, many sources of revenue, many sources of passive income, and having a really long, hard think about that. And also facing down people who said, what's the point doing this? Mm-hmm. I remember meeting one of my ex-colleagues a few years after I left, and he was just like, oh, how are you coping? I feel really sorry for you, Daryl. You're leaving this wonderful world of investment banking to play around in the park all day. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what, mate? I'm going to make sure the next time you and I have a conversation, you're going to be asking me, how can I get out of this? Because I knew, all I knew was, fine, he had the trappings. He had a beautiful car. I remember him showing me his car, and he went, do you remember when you had the car just like this, Daryl? And I'll share with you what the car was. I had a Aston Martin, and a few years later, he'd bought one and said, oh, he's almost like trying to say, look what you've given up. You've given up that car to play around in the park. And I remember saying to him, fantastic. I'm really glad that you have a car that you've always dreamt of. I used to own one, and I don't really miss it. I'm much happier with the life that I have now. And if I get a car like that in the future, great. But I've already had it. So it's already been off the bucket list, mate. I'm now looking at other things on my bucket list that I've been dreaming about for years and just I feared wasn't possible. And now I'm making it possible. And I remember him having this look in his eye like, oh my goodness, Daryl, like, why did you say that to me? Why did you convince me that you'd made the right decision? but I couldn't stop that competitive drive that I've always had.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong, mate. And of course, several years later, he messaged me saying, "Oh my goodness," I think I was on national TV here in the UK, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, I've just seen you on the TV, and you're just creating waves, doing the work you're doing, and it's like it's just so incredible. You're following your passion." And I was like, "That's exactly why I did this."
Yeah, where were you, buddy? 2 years ago, we were having that conversation. Took a 180 on that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I made that decision not purely for monetary purposes, because if it was just about the money, I would have stayed where I was.
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to leave a legacy. I wanted to follow my passion. I wanted to talk about things that really made my heart sing. I wanted to get up in the morning and feel as if I had some control over my day rather than being told what to do by my employers. Do you know what I mean? That meant to me more than anything else, even if I was staring down hold on a second, Daryl, money, you need a bit of cash, mate. I was like, yeah, even if I'm facing that down, I can try and do something about it. But that is more control in that, rather than thinking, I know I feel safe and secure, but what am I going to leave behind? Apart from I worked every hour available, because that's all I was doing before. I was working every hour available to make myself a decent income, to make the bank a lot more money than I could ever make, not seeing my friends and family, not really having a social life, pretty much waiting for my phone to ring or my pager to go off so I could do some work. That was my life before. And what this allowed me to do was to go, I'm going to follow my passions. One of my passions was launching an album back in 2005, actually. I don't know if I've spoken to you about this before, no. But I spent 3 years recording an album. I traveled. I was still working in banking then, but I kind of took some time out. I traveled. I learned how to do orchestration because I wanted to have an orchestra playing, as an accompaniment to a lot of the music I was creating. And I literally learned many things from scratch. I could play lots of different instruments, but I wasn't fantastic at them. But I was great at composition. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to create an album which is like an autobiography of my entire life at this point, and take all these musical influences in. And I created this album. And I had, it launched critical acclaim. I had loads of amazing reviews in the press. I played some pretty big concerts and gigs. I had a #1 video on MTV in Latin America, of all places, based on the title track. And it was because I just had this passion and zeal for going, I'm going to follow my passions no matter what happens. And I've been able to sort of follow on from what happened back then, of going, there's more to life than me sitting in front of a computer screen. And whatever happens, so for example, with that album, and that #1 video on MTV in Latin America, which I like talking about, to reminding people about, the record label went bust, and they lost a lot of money, and I lost a lot of money. I didn't make really any money from that project, but I still have the recording. I still get messages even now, people telling me that the album changed their life, and they're still listening to it even today. So after all of those years, I realized that my creation, something I created, offers significant value. And that's what I wanted from the Primal Play project. I wanted to create something that was born out of my creativity and my passion, and was going to offer significant value to people. And that was it. It was as simple as that. And every decision I've made pretty much since I started the Primal Play journey has been about, I want to launch a project or write a book that I'm passionate about. And even though people may be telling me, oh, I don't really think there's anything in that, Daryl, I'm not really sure. Similar with Animal Moves, for example. I remember when I started writing the project, and I went to certain publishers saying, hey, guys, this is my next book. What do you reckon? Sorry, Daryl, there's no market for it. So, Daryl, waste of time. You're not going to sell a copy, mate. And, I hit, quite a few #1 bestseller categories, around the world, did extremely well out of it, had lots of opportunities out of this book, talking about moving like an animal. And even just thinking about that, people said, oh, not really sure. But that enabled me to create other products like my Animal Moves fitness decks. It enabled me to have conversations about what direction Primal Play should go in. And it also meant I just recently launched my latest book project, my first Animal Moves. So just taking that leap of faith has given me so many opportunities and has touched so many people because of the fact that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have a little punt here. I'm gonna throw this out there and see what the universe returns back. And fortunately, it's been really, really good and really, really positive. And people have kept me going and kept the wind in my sails, even when you kind of question what and why you should be doing something. So anyone in this position considering taking a huge leap of faith, whether it's leaving their 9 to 5, whether it's working on a project that's been on the back burner for years and concerned about what's the point. The point is, if you don't do it, you're always going to regret it. Yep. Even if you write that book just for yourself to read, or just to give it to your family members to say, hey, I've created this. That in itself is a wonderful thing to do. It doesn't have to be a New York Times bestseller to have an impact on people's lives. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, and you know what? I am so with you on this. It was like when I first, I've told the story before, but when I published my first book, The Paleo Thyroid Solution, a few days after, someone had called me and they were like, oh my God, are you like on Amazon every day, like checking the, reviews? And I'm like, no, absolutely fucking not. In fact, that is the worst thing to do. That means I'm out there going, who likes me? Do people like me? That wasn't it. My thing was, hey, look, my thing after that was published was like, I just want Mark Sisson to make the money back that he invested in it to publish it. And at least affect and help one person. If those two things can happen, I'm happy because I'm just glad I wrote it for me. I'm glad I got it out there. And if I could just help one person, now I've helped thousands and it's great. It became a bestseller. Wonderful. But the intention, right? Yes. And I agree with you. You do it for you. It's not about, will people like it? Will people buy it? It's the accomplishment of it. And you never know who you're going to affect. Like you said, with your music video, someone, calls you 10 years later. And, I have that happen too. Someone hears a podcast from 6 years ago and said, oh my God, it's like you were talking in my mind and helped me go figure this out. And you are creating such a legacy. And I love that. So that's really the most inspiring part about this conversation is what you just said in the minutes prior. Let's talk a little bit about, well, first of all, that book, Animal Moves, also inspired the launch of a 30-day online course, right? But let's talk about that fitness deck. It's so awesome. These Animal Moves fitness decks, which are really sort of for everybody, from adults to like infants age 3 to 6. Can you tell us a little bit about those before we get into the book?
Yeah. So the book basically, I suppose it's best to start with the book. The book is really talking to us as humans, as animals, that we should be moving like the animals we are. We should be moving like humans. And moving like a human means we're generalists of movement. We can't hold a candle to any other member of the animal kingdom when it comes to specialties of movement. We can't run very fast. We're not very strong. We can't climb that well in comparison to many other creatures. An ant can lift 1,000 times its body weight. If we can lift a couple of times our body weight, we're entering strongman competitions, right? So there is something about our abilities of movement that cut across such a wide scope of options. We can dance, we can climb, we can jump, we can lift and carry, we can crawl, we can walk great distances. There's all these things that we can do. And however, when many of us exercise, we just choose 1 or 2 things, maybe 3 things off that list. And that's what we focus our fitness on. And I wanted to say, hey, guys, you can expand your repertoire of movement significantly. And there are so many rewards out of that. And you can become more playful when you engage in movement of this nature. And that's what Animal Moves is about. And because I was driving through this idea of spend less time working out and more time playing out, it was difficult having a 28-day program in a book and saying, follow this program, because it almost goes against the idea of creating something a bit more free-flowing and free-form. And that's why I created the decks, the fitness decks, because that enabled people to say, let me randomize my movement. Let me take an opportunity to do something that I may not have done before. I have no idea how long it's going to take me. There's this list of cards that I might have to work through, and let me see how I get along. And then let me try this with my kids. let me try this in an office environment. So I created even more products from that range. And then my latest book, which is my first Animal Moves, I just really wanted to solve a problem of kids, especially nowadays, who are seduced by technology. They're seduced by televisions, they're seduced by computer screens and smart devices, and they believe that that's the entire world for many of them. They don't go outside and play like I did as a kid. They socialize purely via electronics. They're uncomfortable in social situations because that's just not what they have ever done. You know, parents are helicopter parenting and are concerned about them going outside to play and being free-range kids. That's the world we're in, for better or worse. But it means our kids are more sedentary than ever before in human history, ever before. And that's unlikely to change in the near future, if at all. So my book was written to say, hey, you know, there are other things you can do, children. Parents, there are other things you can do to encourage your children to have some of those experiences you had as a kid that you can replicate today. And my book is kind of exploring that. Nathan is a kid who only wants to play his video games, and his dog doesn't want to go for walks. His dog wants to just sit right there and watch the video games.
So cute.
And it takes, you know, he basically starts his journey of exploring the outdoors and exploring movement. And I don't want to kind of spoil the story, but you know, hopefully there's a happy ending, and hopefully it will give kids lots of ideas, and parents can become more playful with their children. And that's I realize now, as I said at the beginning of my journey with Primal Play, or paleo fitness more particularly, I wanted to cater for the elite. That's what I thought was going to monetize my business. Find those with lots of money, and that's going to keep me going and sustain what I want to do. And I've gone full circle, completely gone the other way and gone, no, I want to embrace the issues that I find in society around sedentary behavior and physical inactivity and people feeling disenfranchised with their gym experience, who don't particularly like exercise. Those are the people I want to cater for. And honestly, if anyone had said to me that was a great idea, I would have said, no, why don't you don't go against the trend, Daryl. Do you know what I mean? Go towards, find those who love exercise, because those are the ones you want to cater for. And I've realized, actually, no, I know I'm kind of pissing against the wind, as we say. I hope I can say that on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pissing against the wind. I'm going against the grain. And I'm trying to get these people who are like, I hate exercise. And I want to go, yeah, me too. Yeah, it's fine. Actually, it's fine. But you don't have to apologize for not particularly liking exercise, because I feel the same way. I just really tried hard to convince myself that I loved it, but I wasn't being honest with myself. Now we have a kinship. You don't like it, I don't like it. But Daryl, you're moving all of the time. You're exercising all the time. Yeah, because I do love movement. And I love movement because I find fun ways to motivate myself. Today, I've got to share this story with you today. And I didn't take a photo, which I wish I had done. There was some workmen doing some building project, and there was scaffolding up. And there were all these signs in the scaffolding saying, stay away from the scaffolding, don't climb the scaffolding, don't look at the scaffolding. And I was like, oh, that's actually making me more likely to want to climb. I want to do some pull-ups. I want to use this as like a jungle gym. I want to swing from bar to bar. And I almost took a photo of this sign saying, would anyone else be tempted just like I am right now? Mm-hmm. And I felt like a little kid, and I was just like, I just want to play. And I wanted to say this to this guy. There was a guy with a hard hat on about 2 meters away. And I kind of wanted to say to him, like, oh, I know you're not going to be allowed to do this, mate, but could you just give me like 20, 30 seconds for me to kind of traverse along the scaffolding? And I really wanted to ask, but that moment epitomized for me how I feel about movement. 2 minutes before, I wasn't thinking about doing any climbing. I wasn't thinking about doing pull-ups or jungle gym or swings or anything. But as soon as I saw that sign telling me you shouldn't be doing it, and I saw this apparatus, I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't know, I probably would have got arrested for doing it, or probably would have been bullied by these workmen. But that's what I realized drives me and drives my passion for movement. And I think everyone has that. Even if they hate exercise, there's something in their life or some experience that they've had where they love movement.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to recapture. You don't have to be drunk at a wedding and listen to your favorite song to have a dance. Right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have to, do a charity event to raise money to say, oh, I've taken part in an event like a marathon. You don't have to do those things to convince yourself that it's a worthwhile pursuit. You can have fun with movement at any time. And I could talk about that forever, but I literally have gamified my approach to movement without using tech. I just play games all of the time and think about opportunities of beating people when I'm walking down the street and I see people I can overtake. I'm like, this is really great. I'm giving myself points, and I'm sprinting for the bus. The other day, actually, a couple of days ago, I was running late and the bus driver purposefully, I came around the corner. I was about 5 meters away from the bus stop and I flagged him down and he was like, yeah, whatever, mate. And he just carried on driving. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to get to the next bus stop. And it's probably about 250, 300 meters. And there's a few cars in front of him. And I was just like, I'm going to go for the sprint. So I remember I just took off and I was going for this sprint. And there were people on the bus kind of laughing at this old guy sprinting for the bus. And you could see them kind of wheeling the driver on going, please let this guy miss. We don't want him to catch the bus. Anyway, I just about managed to get to the bus, and he opened the doors, and I got on, and I'm kind of coughing and spluttering, but I felt so elated. I felt so impressed with myself that I was able to do it. I was like, oh wow, that's something incredible for me to do. I'm in my 50s now, and I can still sprint, and I caught the bus. So isn't that wonderful? But it was like a game to me all the same. It was very playful at the same time. And if I had have missed it, it wouldn't have been the end of the world.
Right. It wasn't a stressed out, let me sprint. Oh my God. It was like, this will be fun. Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah. It was like, this is going to be fun. And, I had to bob and weave between people. It wasn't a straight run, but because I'm constantly creating this almost gaming environment, this movement environment, it enables me to get my movement minutes in every day. I have fun doing it. And that fun doesn't mean it's easy. It's serious play. It's serious fun. It means I'm pushing myself, but I'm not necessarily getting the punishing feeling in relation to that. So yeah, I want to be strong as I can be. I want to be as fast as I can be and as powerful as I possibly can. But I want to get there in a way that doesn't feel like, oh, why am I doing this? So yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm imagining like a comedy montage of like, I'm walking through London and like, oh, there's Daryl like hanging from a sign. And like the next one is you're like behind a bus strapped on with some rollerblades. Like you're like, oh, he's hanging from the scaffolding. Oh, there he is. Just like all these different clips. That would be hilarious.
That would be hilarious.
I love your passion for this. And also too, this is so important for parents. Please, if you're out there, get a copy for someone who's having children. This has got to be one of the best books you can buy, expecting parents or any young parents or any parents at all, or for yourself. But what a great gift for people, because this is just so important. And, we know this, and, you go through acting class or any kind of voice classes and things like that in life, they get you into your body, right? They have you like act like a monkey, and then you feel embarrassed and weird. But here's the thing. I like that too. Because that's different. And that's what gets you out of your shell. It actually creates more confidence, right? When you're in a group of kids and you're doing this stuff, or a group of even adults and doing this stuff, I'm sure the adults are actually more weirded out by it, or like, or uncomfortable, or maybe like, this is weird. I feel like we're doing this in front of people. But that in and of itself is great too, aside from just the moves,
Yes.
Getting outside of yourself, being free, not caring so much about what other people think, being a kid again, back into the body. So important. And again, released this September, My First Animal Moves, wonderful, beautiful picture book. Tell us as well, primalplay.com. Tell us how we can benefit more from you. And do you still have the 30-day online course as well?
I do, yes. I do have a 30-day online course called Animal Moves, the Animal Moves 30-day challenge. Primalplay.com is the best place to find out about me and my work. For those research heads, you can go down the rabbit hole in relation to all things Primal Play. So those 3 pillars I mentioned earlier, the evolutionary fitness, the play psychology, the exercise physiology, I have lots of research, lots of blog posts on all of those areas. So it's significantly well researched because I do love a good evidence base for whatever I do. There's lots of videos, there's lots of free ebooks and content, as well as all the products that I've mentioned. So yeah, you can get my books in all good and bad bookstores, and it really just helps to support what I'm trying to do, which is to reduce the likelihood that many of us will live a sedentary lifestyle and think the only way out is to join a gym or to have a punishing exercise regimen. And actually, there are other options. There are alternatives. And it's less about the adults, because for many adults, they've already made decisions about what they want to do with their lives. But for our kids, who are looking to their guardians, right, to model what their life should be like. And I can't imagine what my life would have been like not having those full-on days in the summer of playing all day long. I mean, I cannot imagine if my summers were me sitting indoors playing on a games console all day. And I love my games console. I'm a big gamer even now. But I certainly relished far more those sunny days. And it wasn't always sunny, but that's what I remember.
Like, especially not where you live.
Yeah, exactly. But, for some reason, my summer holidays were always sunny. And even if they weren't, you were still outside playing.
Yeah.
And there were so many activities that you only did because you were playing, right? For example, climbing trees, right? You weren't climbing because because you wanted to climb. It was because you saw other kids doing it. You want to see how high you could get. You maybe wanted to get apples in the autumn. You played chasing games. You got on your bikes and rode for miles. There were just all of these adventures. And I suppose that's what's missing from many people's fitness experience. They're not adventurous enough.
Yeah.
The options that are out there are, even though they say they want to take you out of your comfort zone, we tend to choose what's the most comfortable for us. And that comfort could be running a marathon, right? I'm really good at endurance. I'm good, I'm going to do something a bit different. I'll get on a bike instead of running, right? That might be as adventurous as we might be when it comes to fitness for those who are really good at something. I'm great at lifting weights. Oh, going for a walk is not something I like doing. So let me just stay in the gym and lift heavy, and that's all I'm going to do. There's so many more things we can do with our movement diets. And that's why I do what I do. And I feel that it helps with youthful exuberance. It helps with vitality. It's good for our mind. It's good for the feel-good hormones and cognitive function and preventing cognitive decline. And hey, above all else, it's just a lot of freaking fun.
I love it. I love it so much. And I'm just so grateful to have met you many years ago and to follow your work and what you've done. And of course, we'll put everything to connect with you in the show notes.
Thank you.
Any lasting things you'd like to leave with our audience?
Yes, I would just say, find what you can do that will help you to fall in love with movement again. If you're already in love with movement, just continue on that path and stay there. If you've fallen out of love, find what you can do to fall back in love with movement. Find something that will keep your movement practice sustainable and engaging. Ideally, something you can share with others so you can have really good social engagement and want to continue to do it until the end of your days.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week. Hey, listeners. Over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture. And it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products. And I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.